This year I'm entering Sky Arts Landscape Artist of the Year, which means I need to create 3 landscape paintings, and I was too tired to do any painting yesterday, so I've just got 22 days left to get everything done. But what I did manage to do was just take a little bit of time to look through my portfolio for possible ideas. So this first image is a plein air watercolor and ballpoint pen sketch. And let me just describe to you what's going on, because it's painted in such a loose style that I'm not sure it's all that obvious. So basically, this was done from the pebbles on the Pebble Beach at Budleigh Salterton. So I've kind of hinted at the colourful pebbles here in the foreground. And then off over this pebble rise, in the background, we've got the red cliffs of Budleigh with a bit of greenery on the cliffs. And then there's a beach, a beach cafe here. So a couple of parasols, and then people at picnic tables having coffee and so on. So, and this is kind of a banner fluttering in the wind advertising ice cream. So I painted that a few months ago and I'd more or less forgotten about it. But the reason it caught my eye is it just reminded me that I really love combining biro or Unipin marker with watercolor. That's something I've done a few times with a few different subjects, including portraits and buildings and things like that, and animals, I think. So I was sort of thinking, well, should I do that for some of the buildings in the painting I'm working on at the moment? Not quite sure about that, but I'll comment on that in a bit more detail in a moment. Here's another one, another plein air sketch. I'm happier with this one. So again, this is Budleigh Salterton again, but the other end of the beach. So the Pebble Beach sweeps off in this arc off into the distance. We've got cliffs and trees in the distance here. And then I just sketched these guys, one sitting down fishing, and then another guy just standing there with a book. And I modified them a bit. They're not exactly as they were in real life, but this guy's wearing Crocs, and he's just kind of standing there with his shades on, looking out off to sea. So the other thing I really like is I like, kind of painting people. And I want to try and incorporate that into my landscapes as well, or at least for some of them. And then I also came across this little sketch here. So this is kind of a cool little story behind this. So I've started using LinkedIn more and more, and I've been contacting, people with common interests and things like that. And this image was inspired by a rancher from Canada contacted me, and he sort of said, hey, if you want to check out my YouTube channel and use this video and take some stills as inspiration for a painting, then please feel free. So very kind of him. I checked it out, and I haven't done a painting yet, but I certainly plan to. So this is one of the little thumbnail sketches I did inspired by his video. So obviously we've got the rancher on horseback, then I've got some cattle in the background, and I was thinking, well, does that constitute a landscape, even if I just put a sky and the ground in? To my mind it does, but obviously the main focus is the animal, the people, and the other animals off in the background. So it's just got me thinking about what I can do for a landscape, and obviously ultimately that's up to me. Here's another little thumbnail from the same video. We've got a calf on the ground, it's been roped, guy on horseback, and then a barn, which is distinctive, quite distinctive. I don't think we have these barns of that style in the UK, but you do see them in North America. So I would say that's more of a landscape. So then that got me thinking about the painting I'm currently working on. So this is where I left it last time. So I just blocked in everything. And at the moment, I'm pretty happy with where it's going on reflection. When I finished it the other day, or not finished it, but took it to this stage, I wasn't 100% sure. But I'm thinking, well, I like the sense of distance here. So at the next stage, if I increase the contrast and brightness and detail of the buildings here and here, then that's going to make this seem even more off into the distance. That'll help the sense of depth. And then the other thing I was thinking was, in the reference, there are these lovely cast shadows across the foreground. And, I can include people as well, which are in the reference too. So that's coming back to the biro thing. I'm thinking, can I use ballpoint pen on top of the acrylic? If I have done that before, it's been a very long time since I've done it. And I'm sure it will work, but I'm just wondering whether, in other words, I'm sure the biro will write on the acrylic with no problem. I'm just wondering whether it will give me the effect I want. But that's something I'm considering. But then the fact I've got these cast shadows across the foreground reminded me of another thing I intended to paint. So I took these reference photos up on Dartmoor, which is a big national park near Exeter. Lots of dramatic landscapes and animals kind of wandering, either entirely free or much freer than they normally are in the UK. So the photograph of the white horse here with the long cast shadow, that kind of gives me quite a nice link to the cast shadows in the foreground of the city scene that I'm painting. But I quite often like to work up more than one painting in parallel with each other. So I think it's quite a nice way to work. So I'm going to leave the city scene for today and then work on the horse on Dartmoor painting. But to try and make things fairly time efficient, I'm just going to use a timer to, just allow myself 10 minutes to get the first stage done. All right, so I'm setting my timer for just over 10 minutes. Got the old turquoise watercolor marker, and I'm going to put the horse in around about here, so off center, over to the right a little bit. And for this initial drawing, I'm looking at the reference photo. And I'm not interested in any detail here, but I want to get the fundamental shapes reasonably correct and well proportioned so that we can see how everything sits on the page. It's got a rear leg coming down there, the tail is peeking through. Perhaps a little bit lower. The other rear leg is showing there. Front leg comes down to around about there. So we've got some indication of a horse. Now, we've got this beautiful cast shadow coming out to the left here, so I definitely want to include that. Then we need to pop the landscape in. So I've popped in the bushes and the horizon line, and one of the things that's happened now is, very roughly speaking, oh no, it's not too bad. So the horizon line is a bit above the midway point, because I don't want it to split the painting 50-50 top and bottom. So we've got just over 5 minutes left. So what I can do now is start to introduce a little bit of tone. So I'm just starting off with some burnt umber and some titanium white. I'm kind of mixing two patches of colour. One's mostly white and one's mostly the burnt umber. I've sprayed the paint with a little bit of water, and this is my interactive acrylic. So what I'm going to do is going back to the horse now, just looking at the big shapes and treating it in a very simplified way. So is it dark or is it light? And that's all I'm really considering. And when I come back to the horse in later stages of this painting, then I'll definitely refine the drawing I've done and some of the painting as well. The cast shadow is also relatively dark compared to the surrounding grass. So we've got that blocked in. I'm just going to switch back to the other view, the landscape view. And now I can put in a little bit of tone and texture for the landscape. So this foreground kind of undergrowth, it's not as dark as I don't want to make that as dark as the horse and the cast shadow, because it's going back into the distance a little bit, but I wanted to bring it forward, certainly compared to the distant hills. And then I'm going to leave the distant landscape, but the sky is quite foreboding, as it often is on Dartmoor, and that's going to give us a nice symmetry to our painting. So I just actually mixed together the light and the dark neutral tones that I had on my palette to give me something somewhere in the middle. Just wetted my brush a little bit, and I'm just putting in some of the darker tonal regions in the cloudy sky we've got here. And while I've got that on the palette, I can kind of move that around on the page a little bit, use up the paint. And I can freestyle a little bit here. I don't have to copy the clouds exactly. Just have a little bit of fun. In the last few minutes. Okay, so as you can see, the chicken is still allowing me another minute and a half or so, but I'm going to leave that one there, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next 10-minute episode. So what we've done is just establish the loose composition. We've put in the darkest regions, the next darkest regions on the bottom half of the painting, and then some of the dark regions on top. And hopefully already you can see that that is beginning to establish a sense of place and a sense of light and a little bit of a sense of depth, but certainly we've got the composition in place. Okay, thanks very much for watching. Okay, thanks very much for watching.